Today we're going to talk about 5 different tips on how to crochet the thermal stitch. It's a very interesting stitch and I have to tell you all about it. So let me get started with tip number 1. So first of all, let's start talking about what in the world is a thermal stitch and how do you really crochet this? Here's a little tricky thing, okay? You don't typically crochet it the normal way. So what do I mean by that? If you have a crochet project, pretend my hand is a crochet project, right? So what you typically do when you do rows is you work your way back and forth, right? That's how you do it for a normal stitch. Well, it starts slightly different with the thermal stitch. The thermal stitch is also known as the thickest crochet stitch because, and here's the reason why, you start with a row, right? But instead of going, let me make the row like this. Okay, pretend my 2 fingers are the row, right? So you started with a stitch. So this would be stitches, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever stitch you count, right? And instead of now going back and forth this way, you're going to flip after the first row your project to the side and you're going to work on that dimension. That means instead of going upwards like this, you're going to flip it and going up in a zigzag, working on the front side and then on the back side, always half a row up. So you're working half a row every single time upwards like this. What that means is you are simply making 2 pieces of, pretend you're doing 2 swatches of single crochets. You're making them at the same time connected, right? Because as I just said, you're going up in a zigzag, half a row every single time. So that makes it a little bit tricky on how to count the rows. We're going to go into that a little later. But the point is, the thickness of that stitch makes it really good for certain projects, which is going to be tip number 5. First, I'm going to show you how to count the stitches because it's going to make more sense, okay? So I'm going to flip my camera so you can see what I see. Okay, here is the thermal stitch, right? So to count the stitch, what you would do, let me grab my crochet hook. You're going to count first one entire side, okay? That means whatever you see. I like using these little bubbles thingies, right? These little circles, they look like half arches of that single crochet. This is a single crochet thermal stitch. I like counting those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. on one side, then I flip it over and count the other side, which means you have to count twice to get the total amount of rows. As I just said, you're going in a zigzag. So which means you are working upwards like a normal way, but you're doing it on the sides. So, which means I'm going to hold this on the side so you can kind of see it. Hopefully it's not going to flip. So instead of just going like this, you're kind of going in a zigzag, like you're going this way, then you're going to go this way, then you're going to go this way, then you're going to go this way, and back and forth, right? So that is how you work the thermal stitch. So you're working half a row every single time. Okay, that is very interesting. So yes, that's how you count the rows. It doesn't matter what project it is, right? This would be the half double crochet and the double crochet. So I like looking at my little arches, and that is how I count my rows, okay? The thermal stitch is very well known for just single crochet. What? Yes, most of the time when someone says, I use the thermal stitch, the first thing that comes in their mind is this one right here, which is the single crochet thermal stitch. Why? Because it is so dense that it's an ideal stitch for projects such as like a hot pad or something like that. It's really thick, and I'll show you in a second what I mean by that, okay? Okay, so here's the single crochet as I just showed you. Okay, so that is one swatch for the single crochet. I already have a tutorial for this on my website. In fact, I actually have 2. So I have 2 tutorials for this. One is both of them are part of a project. So you should check them out. If one of them doesn't work for you, check out the other one. I have 2 video tutorials for the thermal stitch because it really is a challenging stitch. But I must tell you, once you get the hang of it, after I would say probably 3 to 5 rows, it will become more natural. The biggest tips I can give you is make sure you do your chains in the back here and add a stitch marker, so you will not miss your very last stitch. If you miss it, it's going to get janky, and it's very, very hard to see it right away. And you're going to be very mad at yourself. So I would highly recommend using stitch markers at the corner or at the edges of your project, so you know where you're at. This is how the single crochet thermal stitch looks like. Not many people know about this one. I'm not quite done with my swatch yet, as you can tell. This is the half double crochet thermal stitch. So yes, you can see there's a big difference in how this looks like, but it's exactly made the same way, just the only difference is this is the single crochet, this is the half double crochet. Both of them are the same thickness. It is a little bit more stretchy on the half double crochet, okay? So meaning it is a little bit of a bigger stitch, obviously, right? I do kind of like the look of it, I must say. It's really, really pretty. Now, you can see my nail coming through. So yes, even though it's thick, you can see tiny, tiny gaps, which you really can't see over here. It's very hard. I have to really push my thumb through. I don't know if you can tell how far I push here, just to, not my thumb, but my finger, so you can really see it. Okay, so single crochet, half double crochet. And now let's look at this version right here, which is the double crochets. Even looks different. I mean, can you tell the difference between the stitches? And all of them are thermal crochet. Okay, so you can see this one is thick as well. So this one is obviously has a lot bigger stretch. I mean, you can literally put my finger through, right? So yes, having a bigger stitch doesn't always mean that you have no gaps, which is one of the reasons that this stitch, the double crochet, is not often used for like hot pads or something, because there are giant holes in the between, right? Just like a normal double crochet, you get this here too, even though you're working in half a row, right? So half a row up, it goes like this, right? So you're working kind of in like this angle, right? Like this is how you're working. Instead of back and forth like this, you're working in an angle. So that means, and you can actually see it up here, right? So do you see this? So right here is that angle, right? So in order to crochet the stitch, I kind of have to go down half a row in order to crochet this stitch. And then I flip it around and then work on the other side, half a row. So you really have that little edge. It almost looks like a ladder, right? So that's how this works. It's very interesting. Now, this stitch right here, I would not suggest for like a hot pad or something, but it can be beautiful for a garment or something, like a scarf or something. It really does keep you warm. Same true for this. This is the most popular because it's so thick. It's very hard to stretch, as you can tell. Difference between this, it's very easy to stretch. So this is ideal for a hot pad. So, wow, that's a lot of information for just a stitch. Now, can you use it for the treble crochet? Of course you can. Once you can get the hang of all three versions, you can easily make that into treble crochet. I'm not sure if I'm going to make a tutorial on that, but I will for sure mention it. So I did show you this part, right? So now we're going to talk about rows versus rounds, because knowing now that you're going to go in a zigzag like this, like, you know, like this upwards, you have to kind of think about that, right? In a row, that is already hard enough. Now putting that into a round means that you have to connect the right row with each other. So you're actually kind of going in an angle when you're doing your slip stitches. What? Yeah, so it makes it a slightly difficult to do this entire project in a row, in a round. So have I done it? Yes, I have, but it's very, very challenging because you have to find the right stitch. So if you're an absolute beginner or an intermediate, I don't think I would suggest for you to do that yet. Go and learn the row version of the thermal stitch, just that you can really get the hang of it and make this interesting and fun, okay? So we talked about 4 different tips already. So one would be how to really do the stitch. What in the world is this stitch, okay? Then we talked about how to count it. You have to count both sides and add it together. That's the challenging part. A lot of people forget that. You have to count both sides and add them together to have the total amount. Then you have multiple different versions of the stitch. In fact, in my membership, I even talked about how you can manipulate the stitch even further and add a little twist to it. So what do I mean by that? If you have ever done a linked crochet stitch, and then you combine it with the thermal stitch, you can make that happen too. So for example, as I just talked about, the double crochet stitch, right, has these gaps. But if you use it with a linked double crochet thermal stitch, so you're going in that zigzag, it does work as well. What? Not many people talk about this. Yes, it does work. And yes, you can do that as well. Okay, so don't think you can't. Okay. Now, the very last thing is I would like to talk about when to use this stitch. I kind of briefly mentioned it already, but I want to go a little bit more in detail. This, the single crochet version, I would suggest doing for hot pads, bag bottoms. I love doing that. Using it for bag bottoms because it really is sturdy. You can use it for the entire bag, which I did for this guy, right? The origami bag, okay? This is folded in a certain way. So here you can see the bag, and the entire thing was made with the thermal crochet, the single crochet thermal stitch, okay? The entire bag. So that means you made 2 rectangles. The handle is a rectangle, small one, right? And then this is a giant rectangle, okay? And this is made into thermal stitch. And because it was made in the thermal stitch, it's extremely sturdy. Nothing will fall through. You won't lose any of your pieces. You shouldn't lose a crochet hook, for example, right? You shouldn't use anything small. It likely will not poke your keys through or something like that. So it's extremely sturdy and durable. So yes, I would use it for bag bottoms, the entire bag, hot pads, washcloth, anything you need really of a thicker surface or thicker texture to protect yourself or projects or objects, right? That's what I suggest doing for the single crochet version. Now, for these 2 guys, I would actually suggest using it for anything you want. So, in fact, I would maybe even down the road crochet a bag that has this guy as the bag bottom. And because I absolutely love the look of this one, which is the half double crochet thermal stitch, I would maybe even make that as the center, the body of the bag, right? So kind of the walls of the bag. Wouldn't that be pretty? And then maybe just to, for the fun of it, create this one or use this one for the handle. The entire thing has the same thickness, just different textures and different looks of it because we switched from single crochet to half double crochet to double crochet. How cool is that? Yes, so you can use this for hats, for scarves. You can use this for anything you wish. In fact, you can even do that with this one. But this one is just very popular for anything you need, like extreme thickness. And it is the same thickness as using 2 swatches, whatever size, whatever circles, rectangles, whatever you want to do, using single crochet and sewing them together. But the difference is it doesn't have that air gap in between. You know what I mean? When you sew 2 things together and has that air, pocket in there. That doesn't have that because you're going in a zigzag and you're making them at the same time and therefore connecting the rows all together without having to sew anything, which is really, really cool. So if you want more details on the thermal stitch, go check out the link in the description. I will have a whole summary. It is important to be patient with this stitch because you're doing half a row instead of a full row every time you go back and forth. You will take double the amount of time than you would if you just used a single crochet, half double crochet, or double crochet. Makes sense because you're using half a row every time. Half a row upwards, half a row upwards, half a row upwards, half a row. So when you feel like you did 10 rows, it does look like you only did 5, if that makes sense. It takes a little bit longer to get to the end point. It feels like someone is holding you back and saying, no, 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 don't go yet. So that's how it's going to feel like with this stitch. So just be patient, okay? One more little quick summary. We talked about 5 different tips on how to crochet the thermal stitch and kind of some tips in between and how you make it really good and how there's different stitches. Oh my goodness, a lot of people didn't know about this. And more project with the stitch as well. And if you want a lot more details and you're not satisfied with the amount of information that I just provided to you, then the TCC is the place to go. The Crochet Club, which is my membership. You click the link in the description, you will get right there. It's going to tell you about it. And it tells you everything about it. In fact, I'm going to go live there tomorrow and we're going to all chat together. It's a fantastic group of people. We are almost 300 members and I literally go through their requests of what they want me to teach them as detailed as possible. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go check it out. It's really, really amazing.